Yeah, so I just kind of a quickie here about the COVID updates. So each week I want to kind of give you little bits and pieces of what's going on. So, found this little actually this is some sort of religious site or something. It says it's not over. So, I don't know if it's the rising sun or setting sun there, but yeah, we're going to have another wave of COVID from the variants. So I think that's kind of the good news, we're in a lull. Bad news is that the variants are doubling each week. So they currently represent 10% of the infections in the country. Next week, they're going to be 20% and so forth. Minnesota has the highest variance, but we'll see. I'll show you the data. Next slide, please. And the reason that we're getting these surges is that the viruses like to masquerade. So that's the analogy here with these masks. Basically, the protein amino acids change over time. And one of the reasons why everybody wanted to rush to get the vaccine done was to block off these variants. And when they're kind of a slower rollout, there's more opportunity for the viruses to mutate and form more aggressive variants. And with influenza, we call them strains. With COVID, we call them variants. So that's the rationale behind that, is that the vaccinations help protect against the variants, but not 100%. And so I want to show you how that works. Next slide, please. So here's the variants, and these are different kinds of variants. This one happens to be the B117 that was circulating from England. And you can see the dark blue states are the ones that have the highest representation of these variants of all the infections. In the Great Plains, under 150 cases. So I don't know if that is such a big deal, but they do double each week, and so that is part of the problem. So these light green states are likely to turn into the dark blue states by the fall here if everything continues in the direction that it's going. And also, I just want to point out that our proximity to Minnesota, just one stone's throw over the Red River here for me. Travel back and forth from Minnesota between the Dakotas can be an avenue, for these variants showing up in the states. So we're not immune from those. Next slide, please. So we know that the vaccines are effective against the variants, but we have to understand that as people get older, that efficacy goes down. Okay, so it's back when I was giving presentations on influenza, I would always remind people that the vaccine for influenza is only 10% effective in 90-year-olds. So, we know that there's overall improvement again in protection against the COVID virus with the vaccine. The older people are more susceptible. So you can see here where people have been vaccinated who have gotten the disease, according to age, and you can see here that the efficacy goes down to about 30% for people over the age of 85. So once again, those 80 and older individuals are profoundly susceptible even when vaccinated. And I'll show you the differences here in their severe disease here in the next slide. Yeah, so here's a vaccinated versus non-vaccinated variant. Now, these are just variants. This is not the garden variety COVID that we've been dealing with. These are the new variants. And you can see that if you're not vaccinated, that 80% will have severe disease. So that's, and that's in older adults, 65 and older. Now, good news is that the vaccinated individuals have only 15%, but again, 15% is, from my point of view, pretty significant, right? So if you get 15 out of 100 people who are infected, get severe disease, you're still, those people are at risk, right, for high mortality and high death rates. So, anyways, this is relatively new information, and again, reassuring that the vaccines do protect the older adult from severe infection, but it's not 100%. And so we just can't be real loosey-goosey about, infection control, because we're still going to have this big issue about excessive mortality in the 80 and older age groups with these variants. Okay, so that's basically what I wanted to point it out. So just as a reminder, we're not out of the woods. We need to take a little bit of a breather, but not a relaxer, in terms of maintaining our infection control, surveillance, and the things that we've learned, for protecting the older adults against disease. Okay, next slide, please. So we want to move into our video here from IHI. So go ahead and play that.
My name is Paige Hector, and along with Angela Devaney, I'm excited to bring this topic to you of emotional and organization support as part of the continuation phase of Project ECHO. How do you define or describe post-traumatic growth? So here's but one definition. This one says that a positive psychological change experienced as a result of a struggle with highly challenging life circumstances, and through establishing perspectives for a new normal when the old normal, it's no longer an option. So it's the recognition of the struggles, challenging circumstances, but that we have this perspective, this hope, this idea that we can grow from this, and that the old normal is just no longer an option. And to pick up on the theme from last month, we radically accept we can't have that anymore, but we're going to go forward. So qualities include reflection, deliberate reflection of how have we been impacted, and that's the theme that Angela's been bringing through week after week, reflecting. What have we learned, and how do we reimagine a new normal? So the emphasis is on not just restoring function, you guys, because I think we all want to get back. We want to get some sense of normalcy, but how do we do an even better job? Because there's so much room for improvement. You might have seen this visual. Lots of different places have been using this, and I wanted to bring it to your attention because I think it was a really lovely way to help us see visually how we move throughout here. So on the left is, who do I want to be during COVID-19? We've got the fear zone, the learning zone, and that dark band on the outside is the growth zone. So the fear zone is really when we were back in the stage. You remember when we were hoarding toilet paper and grabbing supplies and things that we would never need? A lot of complaining, fear. It was just really, really uncomfortable. We kind of got used to things, and we went into a learning zone where we were evaluating information a little bit more before we hit send to send something or talk with someone about it. We stopped compulsively consuming things, and we start to realize that we need to give out some things that we can't control. And then the growth zone is what we're talking about today, where we can take our talents that we have and we can help share them with other people. We think of others and how we can help them, where we're showing more empathy with one another. We appreciate, and where our emotional state is more hopeful. We're spreading hope and looking for new ways. So this to me is very exciting. So I'm going to teach you two different strategies for supporting individual growth. And I'm going to be approaching this from the perspective of this is what we can do with staff, but you guys, guess what? It's also what we can do with our residents. So I would love to see every care plan, every nursing home resident across the United States having these two things on their care plans. Calm, safe place. Here's what it is. It's a resource. It's a resource to help ground. So when I say the word ground, it's really balancing and finding a sense of calm, hence calm, safe place. So when we are feeling anxious, distressed, or angry or fearful, imagining that calm, safe place. So if you were to do this exercise, you could actually do this with each other or with your own self. Where do you go to have fun? Or where did you go? Where do you go to relax? What are those places like? Where are they? And I want to make sure that you realize that it doesn't have to be a real place. It can be imagined. That's okay. When you think of this particular place, what is it that comes to mind? What's your strongest memory of this special, calm, safe place? What are the images and sounds, the emotions? Are there any smells that accompany it? Are there other people present? If so, where are they standing? What are they doing? And then ultimately, I brought the thread of noticing through our feelings and our needs. When you think about this calm, safe place, where does it show up for you in your body? Do you take a scent? Do you take a breath? Does your face relax? Do you just feel more grounded in a little burst of joy? So we're not saying here that the distress isn't real. I'm simply saying, wow, here's a strategy. Here's something that we can do to make an intentional choice to shift out of the distress into more of a calm, safe place. Once again, the theme I keep saying, I want to remind you and reassure you, we are not becoming therapists here. We are simply using some therapeutic tools to bring on board more intentional noticing, calming, beneficial feelings. So the personal safety plan is the second strategy here. It's a way to manage stress or distress in the moment. So when we begin to feel that overwhelm, however it shows up for you, that was, I think, in week 3, when we talked about, do you feel stress in your face? Are your teeth clenched? Do you have those racing thoughts? Are you short of breath? Whatever the sensations are that you begin to feel in your body and your mind, the personal safety plan is something that you can put in place right away. So you catch your stress response, and then you intentionally choose to engage your safety plan. So we have choice, which is really important when we're dealing with things that might be traumatic, to have choice and things that we can actually do. So if I were to ask you, what would be 3 things that you do when you feel really stressed? And it could be that we have a personal safety plan that we use at work, and we have one that we use at home. I'm going to give you examples of things here in just a moment. I'll show you a picture of one. So grounding is a key principle of trauma-informed care. Basically, it's a strategy to help us connect or reconnect with the present moment. So when we are in a state of distress or anxiety, we literally use a number of different ways to bring our thoughts, our mind, back into the present moment, to ground us into what we call the here and now versus the then and there. Because when we are triggered into a trauma response, remember, way back the other week, I said a trigger is a trauma reminder. So grounding exercises help us to bring us back into the here and the now. Here's a bunch of ideas. If we had lots more time, I would make each of these a separate slide with images and we'd practice them. But here's a few ideas. When you begin to feel stressed or distressed, get up, jog in place, do jumping jacks, do rapid physical movement to the best of your ability. The physical movement is actually engaging your body and your mind in a different way, and it takes a little bit of the stress away from what you are experiencing. Gentle movement, wiggling your bottom in your chair, literally, I'm going to put my feet on the ground right now, and I'm tapping my feet. You feel your feet on the floor, wiggle your bum in your chair. You are literally grounding yourself into the present moment, because when someone has been triggered into being re-traumatized, it's like they lose track of where their body is in space and time. So if you can have people touch the desk, like I'm touching my desk in front of me, reach out and touch something, hold a texture in your hand, engage your senses. One of the things you can do is hold an ice cube in your hand, feel the cold and the wet, watch it melt. You can do this with a resident too. You want to make sure it's a resident that won't turn around and throw the ice cube at your head, but imagine diverting your attention away from the distressing imagery that might be haunting you, looking at that ice cube in your hand. Breath work is hugely important. So there's lots of different ways to do breath work and breathing techniques, box breathing, the 4-7-8. I just put those up there as you guys can go take a look at those. Anytime you can elicit a yawn, and I have to struggle whenever I teach this to not yawn myself on video, is you yawn and you are actually opening up your cavity, your abdominal cavity, to welcome in more breath, okay? Breathing out the old air, bringing in the new air. The breath work is critically important grounding work. Anytime you can introduce laughter, jokes, silliness, and fun. A few sessions ago, I was talking about needs and basic human needs, and one of them, guess what, you guys? It's play, it's fun, it's adventure. The more that we can laugh, tell each other jokes. What makes you laugh? Is there a video? I love, there's a Cookie Monster video that he does a Siri commercial. It makes me smile. Those sorts of things, whatever it is that makes you smile and laugh, look at those quickly on your phone, or put a poster of something at the nursing station, or whatever it is to bring that into your work. Music, very powerful, because what happens, you guys, when you listen to music, your favorite song, your body releases a flush of dopamine, the happiness-inducing chemical. Why do we listen to the same songs that we love over and over and over? Because your body is giving you dopamine. You can use mantras as part of your strategy for a personal safety plan. Mantras, there's so many different ones. You know, you can paste these on your steering column, put them on your dashboard, put them on your bathroom mirror, put them at your desk, on your clipboard, but make them visible, okay? One of the ones I like is a hard moment does not mean a hard rest of the day. And compassionate self-talk. So all of these are strategies that we can then use on the personal safety plan. So like I said, it could be a work plan and a home plan. What do you do? What do you enjoy doing to relax and to recenter, to regain balance? Sharing safe, what you do then is once you get your safety plan in place, you share it with people at work. And I have one over here. This is one that I composed for myself. It's just a template I created. You can do this quickly at work. You can put your facility logo at the top. But my plan would be that when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I will exhale deeply and inhale. I know for me, whenever I can elicit a yawn, it's really centering for me. I'm going to soften the muscles in my face and my belly. I'm going to get up and move around. I could go outside if possible. I'm an animal lover. I have a little dog here at the house. I snuggle with my dog. So those are my things that help me recenter to ground myself. Imagine each of you at work having one of these safety plans, and we share them with each other. So when your colleagues begin to feel stressed or you're noticing, it's a gentle way to invite a sense of calm, something that we can actually do. And it's not meant to be punitive or why don't you go to that calm, safe place, or what's on your safety card, right? It's meant to be something lovely and supportive and to be connecting with ourselves. I have a colleague that does these with all of her departments back east, and I'm going to show you a picture now. This is hers. So she's a department head in a major university back east, and all of the staff in her department, they all have their personal safety plans. And what she did was she laminated them and somehow attached them to their ID. So they're always available readily. She can literally pick up her ID badge and look at her safety plan. So my colleague, she says she does a 3-2-1 grounding technique. She does the 4-7-8 breathing technique, and she has a dancing giraffe, which is on the back. That was drawn by one of her children, one of her daughters. Supporting staff well-being, I want to briefly talk about gratitude and recognition. This is something else that we can do to bring about well-being into our nursing homes. Here's 2 ideas, and these come from a very dear friend and colleague of mine, a well-known administrator here in Arizona, Jeff Barrett. He actually began sending letters to family members, thanking them to allow their special person to come to work. I just love that. I thought that was such a great thing, and if possible, you know, it doesn't have to be a lot, you guys, but a little token, go out for a meal, you know, when things open up again, is there a family event like bowling or something they can do together as a family? Go get an ice cream. Create an employee care plan. So he actually has an employee care plan for all of his staff. It has their strengths on it, what their purpose is, what gets them excited, how best they resonate with how they love to be recognized, because there's different ways to do that for different people. And then fun things like their favorite soda and candy. So there's a couple of ideas for you. So the difference, however, I want to point this out, between recognition and appreciation. So appreciation is generally speaking like a pizza party. You know, everyone gets it. That's cool, right? Pizza parties are fun. Anytime I can bring food into a nursing home, it's just a spot of joy for people. Recognition, however, is identifying specific actions that one person or a group of people did. We're kind of like singling them out in a sense. It's individualized to the situation. So just understand the difference here. We can do food and pizza parties and bring bagels and make sure we do it across all shifts and days, but eventually bringing more recognition on board is going to be really helpful to increasing the well-being of your staff. Now, you've heard me talk about nonviolent communication, and using that framework, this is how you could say thank you using nonviolent communication. There's basically 3 components. What were the actions that contributed to your well-being that someone else did? The particular need of yours that was filled, and the feelings that were brought about because of that activity that someone else did. So in other words, here's kind of a, not formula, but here's a way to kind of put it together. So this is what you did, this is what I feel, and this is the need of mine that was met. There's another technique called a recognition story. It's a way, again, it focuses a little bit differently than nonviolent communication thank yous, but it's similar. The action, the focus, and the impact. So these do take a little bit longer, but if you can find the time to craft a recognition story or a statement of appreciation, like the nonviolent thank you, these go such a long way to increasing morale and well-being. I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you.
Well, that I think that was very timely, and you know, the interesting thing or commentary from my perspective is visualizations of nice places, and so using visualization is really important. I also want to add that one of the sessions or goals that I had as a medical director was a concern about how the environment in the nursing home itself was altered or perturbed, if you will, by angry birds. So I call them angry birds, but you know, family members who came in who just had anger management issues. So we initiated a family roundtable session to talk about things like anger management, and it went reasonably well. I'm not sure we had 100% impact on everybody's attitudes, but it was also helpful for staff too. So, you know, that not that our facility was particularly in jeopardy of elder abuse or anything like that, but there were some close calls, you know, where staff's anger management just wasn't optimal. So, you know, I just kind of throw that out there as a possible, you know, consideration for, you know, the stress that comes along in the nursing home facilities with dealing with the pandemic, as well as with day-to-day activities, and to look at, you know, specific programs for such as anger management. And they don't have to be really long. They you know, the programs we had were 15 to 20 minutes. Sometimes they got extended to 30 minutes because people had questions. But we incorporated our psychologist, you know, the facility psychologist, the geriatrician, so the doctors, and then nursing. So it was an interprofessional program for that. If anybody's interested in additional information, just, you know, please reach out to me on that. So I don't know, is there any other comments from Michelle or Jean about the leadership around safe environments? You have any other thoughts, or Kelly?
Well, you know, I always have a thought, Dr. J.
Very good.
I will say on the nonviolent communication and the recognition story she was talking about at the very end, it's very important that as leaders in the facility, you lead by example by doing the same things, and then your staff will tag along. You know, when I love the little safety card that she showed. When I was in the facility, we put, they weren't safety cards specific like that, but we put 3 things on a card on their badge. And one was smile, have fun, and respect. And that's something we really, and I hate to use the word enforce, but encouraged to all staff, is because really your day is smoother if you do those things. If a resident sees you walking down the hall smiling, they may not have the behavior that they could have had if you're walking around with a grumpy face, right? So it's really about building that positive culture in your facility, and it makes your day far easier whenever you have that. And that really starts at the top and trickles down. So you got to make sure that your leadership team is doing those same things.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, they always have those expressions: eat, live, love, and all these other. I'm not sure in that order, but it always seems pretty reasonable to remind ourselves of what we enjoy doing. Okay. Well, if anybody else has any other reflections or comments, please put them in the chat box. If you've got something, some special go-to place that you want to share that might be useful, please let us know. So we want to kind of move in now to the PIP for fall prevention. So the first question is, we'd like to ask everybody if they could put in the chat box what their process is for a post-fall follow-up. So the simple thing from my point of view would have been an incident report. So do you file an incident report? And then secondly, do you have a checklist? Do you use a checklist post-fall? Third one, do you use a huddle? So whatever components, I may be missing a couple of others, but so if you can just put in the chat box what your particular facility does, what the sequence is. So if you got a call right now, somebody fell, what happens? So if you can just put that in the chat box, I'd appreciate that.
I would like to add, while y'all are putting that in the chat box, is if you do have this huddle or the checklist incident report, do you keep all of those things together to make it as easy as possible for the staff? When the staff has to go over here and get an incident report, go over here, get the huddle sheet, trying to make it as streamlined as possible for them. Cindy, you said that your team reviews the falls on Tuesday. So are interventions put in place on Tuesdays, or you do them immediately during those incident reports?
Yeah, I like Rebecca's comment about doing neuro checks. That's I always ordered neuro checks every time I got the report on falls. And it's the question of how long do you do the neuro checks for, right? Because if you think somebody had potential head trauma from the fall, technically the neuro checks should go for up to 48 hours, because if you have a subdural hematoma, it can slowly progress over time. I think for other instances, the neuro checks occur, every whatever hour or every 2 hours until end of shift, and then maybe Q shift after that, and then maybe 1 day after that. So, but it's important that, again, that staff recognize the signs and symptoms of subdural hematomas, subacute subdural hematomas, I should say, because somebody may say, well, somebody's not eating, 3 days after a fall. Well, is that COVID that they're not eating, or is that because they fell and have a subdural hematoma, right? So you got to really broaden the differential diagnosis and keep a high alert on all of these. Yeah, this is great. Well, thank you. Mary's 10 whys in the huddles. So we're getting a lot of good ideas, a lot of elements here. I guess a lot of times, the question is how it breaks down into the medication review, the physical elements that led to the fall. Was it a safety issue, from the environment? what happened in the environment. Was there clutter? Were they not wearing their glasses, for example? Some people, by the way, they may have either cataract surgery or other, vision changes for vision correction, where they have distance vision in one eye and near vision in the other eye. They don't have very good, depth perception. So that's also something to keep in mind. So Judy was talking about having met last week and had a brainstorm about all the root causes of falls in general. Good. This week we'll meet again. Yep, to talk. So that's good. Yeah, no, I think it's always good to do the round table and talk about the different root causes of falls. And that's just exactly what we're discussing right now. Environmental, medications, intrinsic, is there some weakness? I got to share a story with you. I mean, God bless this 84-year-old farmer that I saw in clinic the other day, but he was sent to the fall clinic, right? And I said, have you had a fall? And he goes, no. And I said, well, is somebody worried that you're going to have a fall? And he goes, yes. So when we examined him, I had him get on the clinic table, belly down, because I'm always checking flexibility of their hips, for their hip extension. And goodness gracious, this guy had absolutely no flexion whatsoever. You're supposed to have about 45, you should be able to passively flex your thigh 45 degrees up, and I could barely get it up a quarter of an inch. I mean, this guy was just like stiff as a board. And I said, oh my gosh. I said, okay, well, I found what I needed to find, so you can get up off the table. And he says, what? I said, do you need help? And he goes, yeah, I think I'm stuck. And so, my geriatric fellow, and this guy's a big guy, I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to, needed a Hoyer lift or something. So we got him rolled around, and then he scooching it off to the edge, where you pull out the drawer part to extend the table. And the thing started wobbling, and he was there, and I had to get him back up, and it was quite a scene. The point I'm making is that this guy had no. I asked him, I said, you're still riding your combine? And he goes, yeah. He says, we're out in the field. And I'm going like, well, what if you fall? And he says, good question. So I don't think people think about this stuff. You get a little cognitive impairment, which this guy had. It just that whole safety issue just goes out the door. So we need to think about that. So let's move on. Thank you for your information. We'll try to compile this and kind of share methodologies with everybody, because again, what we want to do is have a sharing of what works and maybe what doesn't work so much, but just have some commonality in our approaches. So yeah, why don't we hand it off here? Allison, can I hand it off to you for your presentation?
Yep, I'm ready to go.
Okay. And I have to excuse myself. So nice seeing everybody. We're running a big symposium today, and I'm on board to give a talk for that one too. So I apologize for the handoff here. We'll see you next week.
Good. So for our falls tracking, this is the form that we've been using to do daily tracking of falls that occur in our building. And so it looks at the location of the fall, the time of the fall, what the resident was doing prior to the activity, if there was an injury as a result of the fall. And then it looks at any contributing factors, including a history of falls, an acute change or a chronic problem, any medications like changes or PRN medications that were given, their functional status, any sensory contributors like poor vision or hearing, psychological factors, if they were having, some behaviors with anxiety or aggression, things like that. And then environmental factors. It includes their fall risk assessment score and also whether or not one was completed. And then if there was a change made to the care plan. So this is something that I do daily to track our falls, and then we review it at our monthly QAA meeting. And this form will put into the data into graphs too. And I think that's the next slide. So it will graph it by all those different factors, the day of the week, the time of the falls, and then it breaks that down into even like shorter time frames by shift, and even each shift is broken down a little farther. The location of the fall, those contributing factors. And so we use this to kind of look at all of that data as a whole and kind of have an easier way to look at it and analyze what we've gathered for the past month at our QAA meeting. Just kind of helps us to identify if there's something system-wide versus looking individually at each resident fall for changes. So we can try to implement things that will have a greater impact on the whole building versus just each individual resident when they have a fall. I think you can go to the next slide. So when we do have a fall, our nurses kind of conduct the fall huddle, and we use the 5 Whys tool for our root cause analysis immediately following the fall. So this is a tool that we have in our nurse resource books on each unit so that they can pull this out and use it as a guide for them in helping to determine what could be the root cause of that fall. Next slide. And then this is our fall huddle kind of checklist for the nurses. This isn't necessarily a form where they're going to enter in all the information, but they'll gather all of this information, and then that's what goes into or is part of our risk management form. So the fall huddle should be occurring like immediately following the fall with anybody that's working on the unit. So that would include the nurse, the CNA, the care manager, therapy, if there's like environmental services like a housekeeper or the laundry staff around the time of the fall, where they might have some input as far as what was going on, or even if they were witness to the fall. And then we also ask that they call myself, the quality nurse, and the director of nursing, and sometimes the administrator too, if they're available. So then we kind of meet as a group and go through those 5 whys. And then we also look at what were the circumstances surrounding the fall. So we talk about all those contributing factors, if there was clutter in the room, what the resident was doing prior to the fall, what they were trying to do, if the resident is able to give us a report of what happened, medications, when was the last time they were toileted, if they were incontinent at the time of the fall, what was staffing like, was staff around and available, or were, do we have less staff on the floor because someone was on a break or something like that. And then the nurse will gather all that data and then implement a new intervention for the resident. And we also have a list of 100 fall interventions. So if they can't come up with anything on their own, it's at least a tool for them to look at and maybe give them an idea of something that they could add as an intervention. So that way, right away, we're doing something different to help prevent the fall from happening again. So all of that information then goes into our risk management report, and then that's reviewed usually within 24 hours at our IDT or morning stand-up meetings. If it's on a weekend or a Friday evening, it's reviewed that following Monday. And then all of the nurse managers review those reports, and they'll put in like a progress or a little note in the risk management report, just reviewing what was done for the fall, if the nurse put an intervention into place, whether they feel that that's an appropriate intervention and agree with it and we're going to continue, or if they feel like there's something different that needs to be done, they'll put in a note to reflect that and make that change in the care plan. And then all of the department coordinators sign off on that once it's completed. So that's kind of looking at the individuals, I guess. As a whole, system-wide changes. We have our fall PIP group going, has been going for a long time. I don't know if it'll ever fully be done because I think it'll always be a work in progress for us. But we try to review our goal for that, and we actually just updated that with our last meeting. And so that's kind of where we look at not necessarily the individual resident interventions, but we look at system-wide changes that we can make to impact our numbers as a whole building. So any questions for me or anything?
That is awesome. Allison, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm thrilled to hear that you guys adjusted your goal. Was it to make it a smaller goal, or is it, are we having so many falls that maybe our goal was too high?
No, I think it was more to focus on a smaller change that we can make. Okay. Our initial goal was looking at our quality measure percentile and trying to get it below that 75th percentile, which we were able to maintain for a while. And we've been pretty close to it, but I just felt like we needed to maybe narrow down our scope. And so we're just looking at reducing the number of falls between 5 p.m. and 7:59 p.m.
And that is awesome. That, you know, focusing your effort on that, just that short amount of time there, so you can really see what works and what doesn't, and then expand it as needed. And maybe you can't expand the same interventions from 5 to 9 to later in the day or earlier in the day, but you have a much better grasp on what's happening. I think that is awesome. I'll just say one other thing about, you know, I've mentioned it before too, that national group percentile, that 75, that, you know, we all want to try and not get starred, but it's really a hard thing for you to make any real impact on it unless you are reducing your actual numbers, because you don't have any control over what the rest of the country is doing. And that's where that percentile is looking at everybody in the whole country. And so it's a, you know, it's a nice thing to look at, but it's not really a goal that we can do much about, other than we're looking at our own percentages and our own numbers. Mm-hmm. I just want to throw in here, Billy at Ave Maria did share their fall huddle, which is a much more in-depth form rather than just the questions that Allison provided for us. So if anybody wants to unmute and ask any questions for Billy or Allison, or any discussion that you'd like to have on this, that would be just fine. That's what we're here for. Billy, is there anything that you would like to mention about your fall huddle tool and how it's working for you guys? Sorry to put you on the spot.
We're having still some issues with some of the newer staff coming up with like the actual root cause analysis. It seems like some of them will just write the why will be because they wanted to get up. So that's something we're working on. I think we just need to continue with a lot of education to the newer staff. But other than that, it works well. We get a better picture of actually what happened.
That is awesome. And yeah, that is exactly, that's how you find their out there thinking process. And it's, you know, and yeah, we just need to, that is asking those whys, where you've got it right in there. Why? You know, they wanted to get up. Okay, why did they want to get up? You just have to help them think through the process sometimes. So that's perfect. All right, if you want to just go to the next slide. I just threw in a couple additional tools that we have through the Great Plains. This is a purposeful post-fall huddle that actually one of my colleagues developed for her postdoctorate work, but it also has those 5 whys incorporated into it. You can go to the next slide, Sarah. This is an example of a fall scene investigation report. This is the one that actually Sue-Ann Gilderman from Empira had shared back when she was doing a lot of education on falls. So we have this available. If this is, I know some of you might be using it, those 10 questions that Mary was referencing, that originally came from Sue-Ann as well. So I just wanted to share this report here, and you can go on to the next, whatever else we've got here. Okay.
I think it's just our wrap up comments. Again, if you would like help by one of our great mentors, please reach out to us and we will connect you with them.